For Unit 6, Lesson 2, Investigation 2, they bring in a Ferris wheel. Now the Ferris wheel is said to start right here on the x-axis, out a little bit. That Ferris wheel begins moving, and they say after 110 degrees, how high will the Ferris wheel be? How high will the Ferris wheel be up, and how far will it be over? So you want to find these xy coordinates of it. You probably found a pattern in the beginning that when you are drawing these, you're kind of making right triangles. Like we could actually draw a triangle in here, and you were doing that before, like when the Ferris wheel was over here, you could keep drawing triangles. You probably found the pattern that if you want to find, let me clear my screen here real quick. If you were doing one over here and you had your angle right here, the opposite is the y value because that's how high it is. The adjacent is the x value. This goes back to that right triangle trig. Now this is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse on these triangles though happens to be the radius because from the center of a circle out to the edge, that's a radius. So we know our hypotenuse is 1 because they told us the radius of this circle is 1. Now that can change, but for this example it will always be 1. So that means this line here is a unit of 1. If you were doing in the first quadrant, the y value, opposite and hypotenuse, back to SOHCAHTOA that we practiced in a previous video, opposite and hypotenuse go with sine. So you should have seen the pattern by now that if you want to find the y value for any angle, you're going to do sine of that angle will equal y over your hypotenuse. Well, in this case, our hypotenuse is 1. And right now we're dealing with 110, but in the past you've done other angles like 30 and 70. So you put this, you'd fill in the angle you know. So for us, we have to find our y value, we would say sine of 110 equals the y value over our hypotenuse of 1. And make sure your calculator is in degree mode. And if you take sine, I can put this as over 1, which doesn't really matter. Y times 1 is y. Sine of 110 times 1 is going to be 0.939 or 0.940 if you round. So that means this chair, if you will, if you were sitting in this spot after rotating 110 degrees, would be up 0.940 units. So 0.940 is this y coordinate. Now to find the x, well, that'd be your adjacent side in this original reference triangle. Adjacent, it should actually touch the x-axis there, but adjacent and hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse uses cosine. So we could say cosine of your angle you're rotating on the Ferris wheel is equal to x over the hypotenuse. Now, again, we know our hypotenuse is 1, so we can fill that in. And the angle we're actually rotating, again, is back to the 110. So we would do cosine of 110 equals x over my hypotenuse, which is my radius 1. Make sure your calculator is in degree mode. Multiply these by each other. I would get x equals whatever cosine of 110 is, which would be about negative 0.342. Now that negative might be a little, put this up here, negative 0.342, but think about it. You are going back, sum for x, you're going back negative 0.342 and up 0.940. This would be your chair's location in terms of xy coordinates on the Ferris wheel if you rotated 110 degrees. Now, we're going to move into an example very similar to this, but we're going to change the radius. We'll say this Ferris wheel is a little bigger. It's got a radius of 4. So if your radius changes to 4, not much is going to change. Remember, for the y value, we use the sine, and for the x value, we use the cosine. So we could say sine of my angle 110 would be equal to the y value over my radius of 4. Notice how the only change is really the 4. Now this should make sense because originally you were riding like this little mini Ferris wheel. The radius was 1. It's like the kiddie ride. Now you have a radius of 4 because you can handle being up way higher or whatever you would think of it as. So we're going to take y times 1 and get y, and 4 times sine of 110. Be in degree mode, please. And if you take 4 times sine of 110, you get 3.759 about. 3.759. And so that means that would be this y value, 3.759. That's how high you are up, which makes sense because you're up a lot higher because your radius is longer. It's the radius of the Ferris wheel is letting you go out farther from the center. What an exciting ride, right? Okay, so now we're going to do the x value, that's the cosine. So we would say cosine of my 110 equals x over my hypotenuse, which is the radius of 4. X times 1 is x. 4 times cosine of 110. Be in degree mode, please. And you should get about negative 1.368. Negative 1.368. And that should make sense also. You're not only out farther, but you are negative because the x value is negative from 0 there, and then a positive y value.